Slices.
My name's Wayne. I'm exercise equipment for the PEP grant. So, along with that, I'm also a strength and conditioning specialist. So, what I like to do is not only just kind of show people how to use the equipment, but talk about fitness in general and how the equipment that was selected fits into the workout. So maybe give you a different idea of working out and some different tips, and hopefully you guys can take away from this just some little tidbits that you can implement into your current programs, or maybe, you know, help you kind of go a different direction with what you're doing now and so forth. So we've got quite a bit of time. We've got about an hour and a half, which is great because I like to kind of really get more detailed. I think the best way to really talk about this equipment and even talk about how to implement workout programs in general is, like with the last session, is really talk about the fitness industry in general. And with the industry, talk about, you know, where we were 30, 40 years ago, and really, you know, kind of is when the fitness industry really started to get, you know, started, to where we are now, and then, you know, where the fitness industry and training is headed. And I think that really will give you a much better idea of you know, what to do and understand the whole free motion training concept that can not only be used on the equipment, but really carried over to, you know, with any types of equipment, bands, balls, everything, and so forth. Because really what it is, it's teaching proper progression of exercise. And I think in a high school setting, or just if the average person off the street starts to work out, I think what happens is, you know, they meet up with a buddy that has some experience working out. He writes them up, or she writes them up a program, do this and that. And, you know, sometimes they hurt themselves because there's not a proper progression involved. They may, you know, be starting off with somewhat an advanced exercise, and they don't know how to do the exercise, and they start hurting themselves or creating a lot of, you know, what we call muscle imbalances and so forth. So, with that said, you know, this is a really good population to talk. The last class was a little bit, you know, had a few more numbers in it, but age-wise, this is perfect because, you know, if we, again, just talking about regular health and fitness in general, if we were to, you know, nowadays walk into a club, you know, a fitness center, and you were to, you know, do a survey of who their members are, it's almost a 50-50 mix of men and women, where actually the women now are slowly taking over membership sales because of their knowledge of the importance of strength training and so forth.
May I have your attention, please? There's a blue-gray Dodge in the parking lot with its lights on.
So, but anyway, with that said, you know, so that membership, the people working out now, the population has changed, and with that, obviously, goals have changed. And so because of that, then equipment and training styles really need to change. And unfortunately, throughout the years, it hasn't. And I think it's a battle because people sometimes are just either afraid to change, they don't like to change, or equipment manufacturers are just making things that are easy to sell. So, you know, again, with that said, let's kind of go back into time a little bit. 40 years ago, when you walked into these gyms, which is really what they were pretty crude makeshift setups of, you know, miscellaneous dumbbells, barbells, some crude pulleys and so forth. And if any of you have ever watched the movie Pumping Iron with Arnold Schwarzenegger, you can usually find it in like the classics section of Family Video, you know, in the back corner, but it's pretty funny. It's not funny, it's actually pretty neat. I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger, he really is the person that brought health and fitness into the mainstream public. And, you know, so the reason why I'm saying this is, again, you know, a gentleman, his name is Arthur Jones, and I'm sure no one has ever heard of him before. He was the inventor of the first circuit, Nautilus circuit, which I'm sure people might have heard throughout the years, and you might have even used, if you think about it, if you've ever gone into an old gym or a gym at a hotel. Nautilus was that old blue framed equipment with the chain drives, and they had the chromed out cams on them and weight stacks and so forth. Well, anyway, the reason how those came about is he walked into these gyms back then and really walked up to the members who were bodybuilders and to the club owners, gym owners, and said, you know, what are you guys doing? You know, what's going on here? And so what we're doing is, you know, we're bodybuilding. What do you mean? well, how do you bodybuild? How do you go about doing that? Well, what we do is, our goal is to get big muscles, big biceps, big chest, and we compete in these contests. Well, today we know that we kind of coined the phrase vanity training. It's kind of, making the body look good. He said, well, how do you go about doing that? Well, what we do is we do what's called isolation training. We isolate a body part, for instance, your bicep, and we overload that muscle to break down the muscle tissue so that the muscle can heal and get bigger. Well, how do you go about doing that? Well, we use dumbbells, barbells, pulleys. We have these, makeshift benches, preacher curl benches, and so forth. And that's what we do. I said, well, I can make machines to make that much more efficient. So that's where the first line of selectorized machines came from, called Nautilus machines. And really, if you kind of even nowadays think about if you go to a health club now, like a Snap, Anytime, most clubs, and you look out into the fitness center, you have all these machines. Like there's 16 of them, and you go from machine to machine, it hits a different body part. And anyway, the benefit of that, the reason why I'm saying this is, when that happened, it really kind of helped bring the mainstream public in, because all of a sudden, in the 1970s then, here came the young male professionals that still wanted to kind of look good, get in shape. So all of a sudden, they weren't athletes or bodybuilders, so now all of a sudden, with limited knowledge, you could actually do what these professional bodybuilders were doing. And all of a sudden, along came the 80s, where all of a sudden, the women started to come into these gyms and starting to use the machines, because now education really started to kick in about the importance of weight training to keep the bones strong, helps with weight loss and so forth. Everyone remembers the 80s with the jazzercise and the leotards and so forth. And all of a sudden, here comes into the 90s, and along comes another gentleman, Roy Simonson. Again, I know you guys don't know who this guy is, but he really kind of looked at the industry and said, you know what, we've been doing the same thing for the past 30 years, 20, 30 years. I'm going to revisit these facilities and see what's going on. So when he went into the health clubs, in the 90s and the early 2000s, guess what he found out? The membership has totally changed. And because of that, like I said, the goals have changed. So now membership's 55% women. You got young males. You got the elderly now working out. They're the new 70s. 50 to 70 now. They're weight training. You have obese needing to work out. And so Roy said, what are the goals of these individuals? Well, they want to lose weight, get in shape. They might be playing golf on the weekends. Maybe they're playing softball, volleyball leagues, and so forth. And he found that, guess what? Before, it was almost 90 to 100% were these young males working out for vanity training, bodybuilding. Well, all of a sudden now, it's less than 10%. And said, well, if that's the case, then why are you looking around? Why are we still training and using machines to work out like bodybuilders, meaning isolation training, biceps, triceps, leg extension, leg curls, and so forth? And that's really all of a sudden when the industry started to make a change, a shift, and that's when the term functional training was really coined, because all of a sudden now the trainers started to realize, like, hey, you know what? I have a woman here that wants to lose 10 pounds, and she's got a lower back problem, and she plays golf. We need to make sure that she's fit enough to do that. And all of a sudden, the physical therapist and the trainer realize that we need to train for muscle movement rather than for muscle isolation. So the reason why I'm saying this is, now fast forward to today, where free motion fitness, and this is what came along, is because of the idea of that is, now all of a sudden we have two categories of machines. We have user-defined machines. So if you think about, again, your past equipment in here, the old Magnum stuff, you sat down in a chest press machine, you grabbed onto these handles and you pressed out. You were basically locked into that movement of that machine. You couldn't change it. The only thing you could change was the weights and the seat position and so forth. Where now, when you get into these free motion pieces, guess what? Now we've created a whole nother category called user-defined machines, where now the user defines their movement pattern. So not only can they do a push in the sagittal plane, but now we can push in this transverse plane, we can push and step in this frontal plane, and now all of a sudden, guess what? We can start accomplishing the goals of today's population and young athletes and so forth. So does that kind of make sense? And that's right, kind of where the industry has gone. So, and that's where this presentation is at now, is we really have two different types of way to work out. We have what's called the older style, which is muscle isolation, which again is that, locking into the muscle joint, overloading the muscle, to what we call integrated training, which now what we're doing is we're doing full body movement. So instead of just doing a bicep curl, we might be doing a lunge with a curl, or we might be doing, instead of just a press, we might be doing a press with a twist, where we're integrating more than one movement and so forth. And what I say as a coach is, there's not one way to train. You still want to integrate muscle isolation training into your workouts, because especially for athletes, for power sports like basketball, football, any sport really that you make contact in, you still need muscle mass in those activities. But then we need to make sure we have that muscle strength and mass. It needs to be functional strength, and that's where I'm going to start kind of taking you through the machines and so forth. So you want to stop there? We can move the camera over here. So,
All right.
Great. All right, so before I tell you the machine, so that's where we were, in the past with health and fitness. That's where we have come from. And now this is today, and I want to kind of educate you a little bit more. And I'm talking a little bit because once we kind of get through all this instruction, I'm going to take a lot of time on the chest press, because that concept I'm going to teach you here carries over into all these machines. So once we kind of go through this chest press, we can go pretty fast up through the machines. We'll let everyone get on and play and so forth. So, but before I kind of show you this, I want to just kind of some general terms of health and fitness, because I think that will help you understand. When we're training, the human body, when we're working out, we basically move in a few different muscle patterns, and we move in about 5 to 7 different ways, and we haven't evolved to the point now where we can do anything different with our body. But those things are this: is we push to work the chest, we press to work our shoulders, we pull to work the back, we squat to work the legs, and then we twist, and then we flex and extend at different joints, at the hips and the waist. That's it. Like I said, we haven't evolved. We can't rotate our elbows 360 degrees or our knees or anything like that. So that's pretty basic. So when we're talking about integrated training or functional training, I think it scares a lot of people because they think, oh, that's beyond my scope. Well, no, it's just taking the exercises that you have always done, but just putting you through different environments, really, and different progressions. So with that said, when we're standing in this room and how we move in different ways for pushing and pressing and pulling and so forth, if we were to divide this space up around us in 3 different planes, and if you're ever taking an exercise science class, you've kind of learned this a little bit. We move in 3 different planes. So say, for instance, like our lower body. We walk and we run in the sagittal plane. So if we were to take a piece of glass and cut me in half, side to side like this, that plane is going front and back. So when we walk, like locomotive and locomotion back and forth, that's moving in a sagittal plane. When we press, or push, press, pull, we're moving in that sagittal plane. If we were to take a piece of glass and we were to cut me in half this way, front and back, that plane, that piece of glass is going side to side. So now we're moving this way to the side. So if we're doing, lunges, we might be lunging this way. And then we also move in a transverse fashion. So if we were to take a piece of glass and cut me in half top to bottom, then that piece of glass is going this way. So those are 3 basic movement patterns that we would move in all 7 of those other movement patterns. And that's what these machines are gonna allow us to do, is to move in those three different planes. And as an example, think about this as, if you were playing basketball, basketball, in just like any sport, you move in multiple planes in one movement. So we not only are moving in the sagittal plane running, like we're gonna do a layup, but we also, when we go to do that layup, guess what? We're twisting at the waist. So in one movement, we're moving in a sagittal and a transverse plane. So my point is this is traditional equipment, the old equipment from the past that kind of has come with us a little bit. If you think about every piece of machine, if you get in a chest press, a shoulder press, a lat pull down, a leg extension, a leg curl, those machines only allow you to move in one plane, which is the sagittal plane. Well, today, especially in this environment, for these young athletes and students, and even for the faculty and staff, we need to be able to train in all three planes in multiple movements. And that's what's going to, number one, is going to create, it's going to be for injury prevention and so forth. So with that said, let's get you up here as our first demonstrator. So is it kind of making sense? If I'm talking too much, just let me know. So this is, hold on. This is a perfect way if you're, how many in here are PE teachers? Any of them are going to be teaching students at all? Okay, I'll forget about that then.
Well, I might be doing summer school.
Okay, so what I always tell, whenever you're showing this equipment to a first-time user, always just show them what they need to know first. That's it. So because you can do so many different exercises and progressions with this equipment, I think especially people will get confused if you stand here for an hour and a half like I am, and then telling them about all these different things. They'll be like, oh my God, it's too much for me. But this is how I like to show it. So what's your name? Glenn. Glenn. Hey, Glenn Wayne. So go ahead and have a seat. When I'm at I've talked to you a little bit maybe about pushing, pulling, movements, and so forth. This machine is the free motion chest, which is going to work just that. We're going to be a pushing motion, working the chest. So what I want you to do is reach around, grab the handle, just bring it to your chest. And the best way to do it is bring it right up to your chest, and then I'll bring your elbows up, palms down, and then I'll just press out to my finger. Just like if you're laying down doing a dumbbell press. Now straight back, just like that. That's perfect. Do it a couple more reps. That's it. So that's your chest press. And that's what I like to do. Okay, on to the next. We go on to the row and so forth. Because really, if you had a traditional piece of equipment in, that's what you're going to show them. So the benefit of this machine is this, is he sat down, it was easy to get into, there's absolutely no adjustments on here, because when he reaches back and gets into a starting point, he's going to put the handles into where he's comfortable with. Where if you're thinking about a traditional machine, if I was a trainer, like, okay, Glenn, we're going to have to adjust that seat to number 3, and then we're going to make this adjustment to back pad 5, and then we're going to put you on the starting plate 3. You're going through all that. So go ahead and sit back down here. So now when we go through the training, this is what I want to beat into your head. This is how we progress with exercises. We're going to take you from a stabilized environment to an unstabilized environment to a challenging environment. And that's where we want to progress. So we never progress to an exercise until you've learned the basics. So Glenn, go ahead and just do a couple more reps. So Glenn's been working out with me for 3 to 4 weeks. He's doing the basic chest press. This is, again, with this machine, press up here once. I can do an incline press to work the upper chest. I can do a flat bench to work the middle chest. I can do a decline press to work the lower chest. And then I can do a fly. So what I call them is hug a tree, just like that. So that's a chest isolation exercise. So if I were to have traditional equipment in, I'd have to have 4 machines just to do those 4 different exercises. So right now, Glenn, you can rest with us, stay right there. He's in a stabilized environment, meaning that his feet are on the floor, he's got a seat pad, and he's got a back pad. He's basically making contact at 4 different points with his body, creating a very stabilized environment. The benefit is this, is we can then do our isolation training. So I can progress. So if Glenn's like, hey, Wayne, you know what? I still want to, get some muscle size to me. I want to do some vanity training or so forth. Or if Glenn has never worked out before, I need to get him in a nice, stable environment to teach him the exercise. That's what we're doing right here. But so now, 4 weeks go by, Glenn's improved, he's increased resistance and so forth. This is what happens, and you can think about your own workouts as this. Unless you're, an elite athlete, most of us, genetically, you're only gonna be so strong. So if I were to have Glenn do that basic chest press for 8 weeks, I can almost guarantee you that he's gonna reach his genetic strength potential by then in 8 weeks by progressive. So if he could only stay 10 reps starting off, he can only do, say, like 30 pounds, and in 8 weeks later, he's doing, 100 pounds 10 times. I can guarantee you that in the next 2 to 4 weeks, he's not gonna get much stronger, because genetically, that's probably where he's gonna be at. So this is what happens traditionally is people start getting bored, or they start getting frustrated, like, I'm just gonna push through this, I'm gonna load it up, I'm gonna do it, and all of a sudden they're struggling, they hurt their shoulder, and then obviously, then they stop working out. But so that's what happens is we need to have progression. So once Glenn reaches his genetic potential in this stabilized isolation exercise, now I need to have him keep progressing. So let's say I interviewed Glenn. When you work out early, what are some of your goals that you want to accomplish when you work out?
Just keeping different muscle groups fit.
Yep. And then do you play any weekend sports or anything like that? You have kids or?
Summertime more so.
Yep. So you play softball or something or golf?
Tennis.
Tennis. Yep.
Running.
Yep. Perfect. And you know what? Glenn is a typical person in a health club. That's exactly it. Lose weight, get in shape, play weekend sports, and so forth. So you think about that when you play tennis, are you sitting down in a chair swinging your racket?
Sometimes I wish I was.
Yeah, exactly. You're standing, right?
Right.
You're running around in free open space. So what has to happen, I always tell people, your body's like a chain. You're only as strong as your weakest link. So, with tennis players, you're running side to side, you're running front and back, you're swinging. So if you don't have good balance and stability, if you don't have good speed, if you don't have good core strength, if you're lacking something, then guess what? You're either going to get injured or your performance is going to suffer. So a lot of people now think, oh, you know what? I'm going to start getting stronger. I'm going to start weight training. That's going to be making me a better athlete. So they start getting on machines, going through the circuits. Well, guess what happens is they get on the chest press. 8 weeks later, they get down like, oh yeah, you know what? I'm a lot stronger with my chest. But the problem is they've never done any pushing, standing up, in lunging positions. So what happens is you're not strengthening your body as one unit, what we call a synergistic fashion, to do that exercise. So now, when people started coming into the gym's weight training, we've created a lot of muscle imbalances, and especially with athletes. And a good example is this is, let's say a high school coach came in and he has an offensive lineman that can bench press 300 pounds, which, that's great. He's probably in the 95th percentile of high school athletes. So as a strength coach, with my knowledge now, is I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time or effort trying to get him to bench press 325 pounds or 350 pounds, because guess what happens is when you're on the football field and when you're using that upper body strength, pushing an opponent in front of you, what are you usually doing? You're usually in a squat position, you're usually stepping, or you're usually twisting like this. So as an example, I'd take that person over to the free motion chest and have him get in a staggered stance and do a chest press this way, and all of a sudden he can only do 150 pounds, just an example. And 170 pounds, he starts to kind of slowly walk back. Guess what has happened is he has 150 pounds of dysfunctional strength that he'll never use, because either his core is not strong enough to support his upper body to push 200 pounds, or his legs aren't strong enough, or he doesn't have enough balance and stability to do that. So now, as a strength coach, instead of potentially trying to hurt him to bench press 325, I'm going to maintain that 300-pound bench press, but now I'm going to start to integrate the entire body doing that exercise. So now this is kind of how it works, is to push something standing up like this, guess what has to happen? Your core has to be strong enough to keep your back in a nice alignment, right? And then you have to have good leg strength and balance and stability. So if Glenn, who's never really worked out before, I'm not going to put him into this position right away and do a chest press, because he probably couldn't do it. but this is how I'm gonna progress you on here. So now, Glenn, I'm gonna go ahead and grab onto the handles. So we were in that stabilized position, right? Now I'm gonna take you through some instability. So I want you to take your back off the pad. Yep, bring your hands to your chest again. All right, so now I want you to do the same exercise, just like that. What are you feeling differently?
Abs are contracting.
Yep, because if not now, what's gonna happen is his lower back and his abs are in this isometric contraction, keeping his back stabilized. If they weren't strong enough, to allow him to push 30 pounds, what would happen is he'd go back into that. See, you got some, decent core strength. What happened, if I do this now, see your core even engages even more so. So what happens is in order for me to keep pushing more and more and more pressure on you, you have to fire more and more muscle tissue. And that's the point is, so now what I do is, okay, Glenn, now throughout the next 6 weeks, I want you to increase your resistance through this position. So now what's gonna happen now is, I'm not gonna create this absolute strength in the chest anymore, but what's happening is whenever I take stability away from him, other muscle fibers have to now activate. So I caused an action, now there's gonna be a reaction. So the reaction now is, your core is engaged. Guess what, now it's gonna happen, more of your muscles in your shoulders and your triceps have to engage to support that muscle. So, and that's how you can rest a little bit. And that's how your body works, your muscles work. They work off an all or none principle. So your muscle fiber either fires or it doesn't. So you have thousands of muscle fibers throughout your body, and then in each part of your body you have motor neurons that what happens is your brain sends a signal to those muscle fibers, and then it says, okay, you're gonna need to fire to lift that weight. And then as the exercise becomes harder and harder, oh, we need to fire these muscles. Oh, we need to fire these muscles to support this. So that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to get your body to fire as many muscle groups as possible. So now let's say that Glenn, for the next 3 or 4 weeks, he's got his weight back up. He's saying, hey Wayne, guess what? I'm doing a set of 10 in an unsupported fashion. I'm doing the same amount of weight as my back on the pad. Guess what happened is he just increased his core strength dramatically. So now that strength he's creating in his upper body, he's gonna actually be able to use it playing tennis and other things. So, okay, Glenn, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna keep challenging you in different ways. So go ahead and grab the handles. And this is where you can have fun with your own workouts, or if you're showing students. Again, whenever we take a point of contact away from the floor or the machine, your body's gonna have to work harder. So go ahead and take back off pad. All right, I want you to take your hips off the back pad too, because you're still making contact. And I want you to put feet on the machine. Now do the chest press. See, now we didn't even touch the weight, but the exercise is much more difficult, isn't it? Because see, now we have an unstable base in the lower body. I took away all the support on his back, and now his core is engaged even more. Now his hips are starting to engage to create stability in his hips and everything. So we're creating more and more muscles are having to fire for him to push that exercise. All right, so now we can do that. Now we can kind of have fun. Remember I said we move in different positions? Now this is what I want. Instead of you just pushing straight forward and back, I want you to press towards the sink and then towards the alternating presses. So I want you to push that hand over there, then bring it back, and I'll push this hand over here. So what I want you to do is elbows up, always keep your elbows up, and I want you to push and then concentrate on twisting. There you go, like that. Perfect. Because see, now what we're doing is not only is the core engaged to support the back, but now we're moving it more dynamically. And what do you do when you're playing tennis? You're twisting and turning. First time you ever play tennis in the summer, what's always sort of your core? Because even if you've done hundreds of sit-ups, you're not used to moving and rotating like this, and so forth. So now we've taken them through that progression, so go ahead and bring them back. All right, Glenn, I think you're ready. So now we're gonna really start challenging. Ultimately, we wanna train you standing up. So now, with these machines, now we're gonna get into the challenging exercises. So we went from stable to unstable, now we're gonna do challenging. I haven't changed the chest press at all. He's still doing the chest press the same way. We're just changing the environment. So if I feel that he's still not quite ready to stand up and do the exercises yet, and again, I'm just kind of going through all of them. Okay, Glenn, come over here, and I want you to sit on the ball. So I'm going to sit him back down again. Go ahead and grab the handle. Grab that handle. All right, now I want you to do the chest press again. So now what are you feeling? You're feeling even more in your legs now, aren't you? Because, see, yep, so before when you were sitting down, you were feeling it in your core by taking your back off pad. Now we're taking this stability away, and now guess what? Your legs are having to work to actually now support and balance your hips and so forth. That way, so ultimately, then again, we can go through the progressions. I can have you twisting and turning, just like that. Yep, I can have you, do the inclines and the declines and so forth. I can make it even harder yet by bringing your feet totally together. Like bring your knees together. Yep. So, yep, it's even harder yet. Okay, so go ahead and bring it back. And I'll show the rest. I'll get you one less. All right, so now, and again, now we get into some more challenge. So ultimately, again, I told Glenn, well, we play tennis, we're not sitting down, we're standing up. So now he's progressed. Guess what's happened is he's developed upper body strength. He's developed the core strength to supplement that upper body strength. Now we need to work on the lower body strength to go along with it. So now with these, now we can start getting into more of the integrative stuff. So I can go from easy to advanced. So say I'm not changing the exercise. So I can go from a nice stable base like this, squatting down, chest press, just like this, to a little bit more difficult by narrowing my stance. Now I'm in a lunge position. So now I'm doing the chest press this way. See, I can alternate. See, now what's going to happen is now my lower body, people are going to start thinking, oh, my legs are getting tired. See, now you can kind of start seeing muscle imbalances and insufficiencies. A lot of sports require muscle endurance. If you stand in a lunge position for 30 seconds doing this, I guarantee you a lot of people, they're going to think, oh my God, my legs are getting tired, because they've never done that before. To ultimately, for, again, tennis, what are you doing? You're lunging, right? And pressing this way. So now not only are we using our upper body, our core, but now we're actually integrating now our lower body into it. And see what's happening now is we're strengthening our body all as one unit together to be able to do that exercise in this synergistic fashion and so forth. So does that kind of make sense? So that's how not only this training on these machines go, but that's really where the industry is going now. The trainers are using, think about other implements, medicine balls, dumbbells, tubing, all kinds of body weight. So we're starting, once we understand the progressions, you can kind of really start having fun with it. So the free motion equipment, this is another benefit. You can look at it, it's not only a piece just for pressing, but because these swivel 360 degrees, see now we can stand behind, and now we can do pulling with it. So we can do like rows, we can work the core by doing rotation stuff, triceps, biceps, shoulder press, and so that's really the versatility. So if you're kind of doing a workout, you're like, oh, someone's on that row, I want to do a pulling action next. You can just get off and do it right here. Another benefit, if you have any community members or people, students that are in a wheelchair, some disabilities, the shoulder press, the chest press, and the dual cable press are all ADA compliant, meaning that someone in a wheelchair can pull up to this piece and do everything themselves without assistance. So they can back up to the wheelchair, and everything that somebody can do on the machine, on the face, on the seat, they can do over here. So that's one benefit. They could even use the row as well if they just kind of pulled up to the side and grabbed onto it. So is everything, so that's so what are the three progressions? So we go stable, right? To unstable to challenging. All right. So with that said, so you're my next person. So let's come over here. Okay, so now we can kind of start moving a little bit more. Okay, so what's your name? Sarah Wayne. Okay, so go ahead, have a seat. So let's say I briefly interviewed Sarah, and again, Sarah's just starting an exercise routine. She really hasn't worked out much. All right, Sarah, we're going to work on the back. So the back's the opposite of the chest. We're going to do pulling instead of pushing. So on these machines, if you look, the placards, and I see that you guys have the exercise progressions hanging on the walls as well, but usually the top picture is always the most basic exercise. So the most basic way to use this is grab onto the handle, just reach forward, just like they're doing, pull it right into your chest.
Oh, to my chest.
Yep, a little bit higher chest. Well, pull it right into the side like this. There you go. Now come forward and pull it back down. Perfect. You just mastered that exercise.
Alright.
So, and again, so now Sarah, I'd have you like, I would have you, progress throughout the next few weeks. I'd have you increase the weight a little bit to gain that strength in the back. So again, we're doing muscle isolation. You're sitting down, you're supported. That's allowing us to increase the weight to overload that muscle to get the strength. All right. So now you come to me, hey Wayne, 6 weeks later, hey, what else can I do on this machine? I see all these different pictures and I think I'm ready for something else. All right, Sarah, well now we want to take you from stable to, now we want to take you to unstable to challenging. So first of all, I can say, well, before we take you to unstable, grab on with one arm, just with one arm. What I want you to do is I want you to start doing a pull, but I want to add a twist to it. So I want you to pull in with this hand and then bring that other arm across. There you go, perfect, yep. So now again, maybe Sarah plays racket sports or something like that, so now we're working the back, but now we're dynamically starting to engage the core. So we might have to back up the weight a little bit. I can make it a little bit more fun. See, with these machines, the cables are routed differently from most machines. Instead of a 1-to-1 pulley ratio, see, most machines, they come over this pulley in the back down to the weight stack. So every inch that weight stack travels, this would travel an inch. So meaning that if I had 10 pounds on a weight plate, I'd have 10 pounds of resistance. This is a block and tackle machine where that cable's going to come up from the bottom and it's going to come and it's going to wrap around twice. So, and it's going to come back down, creating a mechanical advantage. And what happens then, this is what happens is, for every inch that stack travels, this now travels 2 inches. So what that does is, it allows us, this handle is always traveling in front of the weight plate. So now if I put in a little bit more weight, instead of always training on that one traditional speed, 2 seconds, nice and slow, because most machines you get ahead of the weight stack and you slack it. See this? See how I can train at a different speed? Now again, I can start simulating a speed of an activity. And so without even changing the amount of weight, speed is another way to change the intensity of the workout, because you need more muscles to decelerate and accelerate a resistance. So now I'd say, all right, Sarah, we're gonna have a little fun here. And I want you to do as many pull twists in 20 seconds as you can. And keep that elbow in nice and tight to your waist. Yep, there you go. And really kind of get that arm across. There you go. Perfect. And see, now all of a sudden, guess what? She's recruiting more muscles. Now her heart rate's going to start coming up. And now we're starting to kind of simulate the timetable of different activities. Perfect. See, now all of a sudden your heart just came up just from doing that and so forth, but we're still sitting down. So that's another way to kind of think about your workouts. Instead of just always going by 8 to 12 repetitions, as you progress, okay, this is my last set, I'm going to challenge myself and do this for 20 seconds and so forth. All right, so now I'm going to get you to go ahead and stand up, Sarah.
Right here.
Yep, just kind of back up a little bit. And now instead of sitting down and doing, again, we're going to go back to the basic row, grab the handle. And now just get in a little mini squat position, get your butt down, and now just pull right back in. There you go. And if you top the weight stack up, just kind of like move in closer a little bit. There you go, perfect. Now what are you feeling?
Like I'm being pulled forward. And
Yep. So now what's going to happen is you're going to have to counterbalance that weight. So now your legs are working, your core is working. So not only are you working your back, but you're working basically your entire body. So now as you start to master that exercise, all right, Sarah, you've increased the weight, let go with that hand. And now what I want you to do is do this. Bring your right foot back, so you're in a lunge position. There you go, now do the same row again. There you go. See, now what are you feeling? You're feeling your left glutes are starting to fire. So again, we're not changing that exercise. I can have you start doing the twists, right? So I can have you bring that one arm across. So you're gonna pull, and then remember the twist. Nope.
Oh,
Pull. There you go.
this. I was
like
gonna
that.
say, oh.
Yep. There you go. So now I can even make it more challenging. This is what I want you to see if you can do this. Is I want you to do this. Is I want you to stand. I want you to lunge and then pull and then stand back up. Lunge and then pull. So you're still pulling, but now guess what?
No.
But see, that's a perfect example. You know, and how often, every sport, you're pretty much doing that activity.
Right.
You just don't have the balance and stability yet to do that. So I say, okay, Sarah, forget about that. We're gonna go back to a little bit more stabilized base. So now we come over here, and now I say, okay, but you can probably do this. That's what I want you to do. I want you to squat and then pull. Squat and then pull. Try that. So I want you to squat first. Now stand up, and then you pull as you're standing up.
Okay.
So squat, and then so all you do is squat, and then there you go, like that. Perfect. See, now you have a nice stable base underneath you, but now we're strengthening the lower body as we're strengthening the upper body. See, now as a couple of weeks go by, I'll say, okay, Sarah, let's start getting you a challenge a little bit. Let's kick a leg back, and we'd work your way into doing that, that lunge row and so forth. So that way, again, all the strength that that's good, that you've kind of worked at for your back, that's now functional strength, because now after a while you'll be able to have the stability to ultimately, when we play athletics in everyday life, there's a lot of times when we might be standing on one foot doing things, and so I could have you standing just with one leg, doing this, kind of counterbalancing, or then you can do stuff like this. To ultimately, you can do, a one-legged squat. That's pretty advanced. But, that's the benefit. If you can have an athlete do something like that, their chances of getting injured have decreased greatly because you have so much balance, stability, lower body strength to complement that upper body strength. The same thing with your chest press. If they can stand and actually do, a lunge press like this, the stronger they are in the lower body, the less injury prone they're going to be, and so forth. So again, you look at this machine, what else can you do with it? You can do, torso rotations. I can use it for triceps, this way. I can use it for abdominals, posterior ab tilts. So that's kind of the nice thing is, you can use it for kind of lateral raises for the shoulders. So each machine, you can really kind of look at it and say, oh, what else can I do with that? But the basic of the machine, chest, row, that's how you progress someone is you start them off in that stable, isometric, or the stabilized environment, increase the back strength, and then you take them from stable, unstable to challenging to get the rest of the body strong enough to catch up with it. So, does that make sense so far? All right, so you're next. All right, so again, we have the basic machines in here. So we have the chest for the push, we have the roll for the pull, and now we have the shoulder for the press. All right, so what's your name? Faye. Okay, Faye. So you've been working out a little bit before, so we're going to start you off in the stabilize. Go ahead and get your elbows up right there. Chest press, elbows back. Perfect. See, this is one cool thing about these machines. Normally, I can't use a lot of shoulder machines because just throughout the years, I can't externally rotate my left shoulder. Because these swivels, see, just like she's doing, you can change to whatever direction. You can bring the elbows in, you can rotate your hands to allow whatever range of motion you need to do. All right? So now Faye, she's, again, progressed through. What's the next step of progressing someone? Yep, so back off pad, the same thing, shoulder press. And then, and if I was training her, I just watch her and see how athletic she is. Some people will progress faster than others. We can do alternating presses if you wanted to. Yep. Again, the benefit with these machines, each arm is independent. So each arm has to do its own resistance, unlike typical machines where if you're real dominant sided like I am, I'm real right side dominant, then a lot of times my left side is going along for the ride. Where here, that doesn't happen. My left arm's gotta do just as much work. So where, see if she started to, you can put your feet up on there, yep. Perfect. You can even go so far as just holding your feet up off the ground and not touching anything. Yep, just like that. Now that's really got a lot of core strength. And usually when you create a harder environment, you have to decrease the weight a little bit. See, now you're really activating the core. Yep, perfect. So then ultimately, then we can walk around the backside and then do all the challenging stuff standing up. So that's what we want, is we want to get you up off the machine. You know, that's the thing is, we're a sitting society. More than any time in the history of the world, we sit more and more. You know, especially even our kids. You know, we get up in the morning, we're eating our breakfast, we're driving to work, we're sitting at our desk, on our computer, driving back home, we're back on our computers or watching TV. And what's happening now is we're seeing these muscle imbalances getting in younger and younger individuals. We're getting these rounded shoulders, we're getting the posterior ab tilts, you know, because our hip flexors are shortening, you know, our backs are rounding, and we're all kind of walking around like this all the time because we're sitting. So the more we exercise standing up, naturally what happens is it puts you back into that nice stretched position, you know, shoulders back and so forth. And when you exercise standing up, it naturally corrects. It naturally corrects any muscle imbalances. So now, Faye, if I walked you back over here, so same thing. You know, I can have you sit on a body ball again if I want to do that. I could have you stand here, just do a one-arm press. I can incorporate, you know, a squat press with a twist. You know, just like this. You know, I could do lunges and so forth. So the progressions are the same for each machine, but the exercise stays the same. You're just changing the environment. You know, again, looking at the machine, what else can you do with it? You know, bicep curls, tricep, reverse wood chops. We can, because this is a low pulley, you know, we can do some isolation stuff, front raise, you know, we can do lateral raises, you know, better than what we could use dumbbells with, and so forth. And we could do, you know, one-arm rows and so forth. And even little things like this, especially if you're working with younger individuals, especially like with adolescents, you know, they don't have the hormones yet to really increase muscle strength. You're really kind of increasing the strength of their neuromuscular system. So if you're using these machines with them, or most of the time it's bands and balls, you can do things like this. If they're standing here and they're pulling this way, just simple things like closing their eyes makes the environment harder, because now all of a sudden, ooh, they have to kind of stabilize, or kicking one leg off the ground and doing that exercise, because what's happening then is you're training their neuromuscular system to become more efficient. And that's kind of how, you know, with physical education now, that's what we've learned is, you know, the elementary students, it's mostly body weight training, light dumbbells and bands. It's training their neuromuscular system. It's training them how to do the basic movements, chest press, pull downs, squats, you know, stuff like that, controlling their body, to where when they get into the middle school, you know, now we can start adding some resistance with bands and medicine balls and stuff, to ultimately then hopefully when they get to the high school, now their core is strong, they have some good balance and stability, they have good you know, movement patterns, they know how to move and control their bodies. So now we can actually then start, you know, loading them up with weight and start doing some more challenging movements and so forth. Where unfortunately, you know, that's where we're going, but unfortunately nowadays, the high schools get them and they're overweight, you know, they lack core strength, they've never worked out before, and then the high school's starting all over again. So that's kind of the progression that we're creating with the PEP grants through the school systems now. So let's keep on moving. We'll come over here. So this is my favorite machine. So again, you think about what this room was like before. For legs, you had, I don't know if you had, yeah, you had like a leg press in here. So again, leg presses, unless you're training for muscle isolation, they're pretty much useless for the average person, because again, You're laying down in a machine, totally supported, your feet are up off the ground, and you're just overloading just one spot of your body. Well, we know that obviously, you know what, if you lack the balance and stability and core strength, you know, to do a squat, then, you know, you're gonna be tumbling all over the place. So I'd rather have you train a squat, and then, because then what's gonna happen is when your feet are on the ground, your entire body is stimulated. And that's what's the benefit of this machine. This machine's just like the other ones, they're gonna be the same progressions. This machine's gonna take someone through a stabilized environment, teach them how to do the mechanics of a squat, and then once they learn that and going through the range of motion, then we can get, you know, more dynamic and functional. So I'll kind of show you, but I'll have you get on next. So this is what I'm gonna do is, what's your name? Brian. Brian. Okay, go ahead and step on. So again, let's say Brian's never worked out before. This is the one piece you want to talk about safety first, is go ahead and lean back. Just kind of put your shoulders right here. Bring your feet up a little bit. To adjust the squat to a full range of motion, all he's going to do is hang on here, now squat down and then pull this way. So that's going to start, now once you get down, now you go ahead and stand up. See, and that grabs the weight, and now I can do the exercise. Now to release the weight, go ahead and squat down, let the weights touch. Now pull the clutch. See, now it pulls that pin out, and now you can stand up and then walk away that way. So that's the one thing that you want to teach the kids how to do is when you get in, just pull the machine down to the range of motion, but to get out, you have to let the weights touch, pull the clutch, and then walk out and so forth. All right, so this is how we teach the progression, stabilize. Nice wide stance, back on the pad. Now, Brian, just go down to a half squat. We're going to do a parking squat right there. Now stand up. So again, you know, you can judge how athletic the person is. But let's say that, you know, Brian's 75 years old and he hasn't worked out in a while. I'm not going to expect him to have the strength or the range of motion. So go ahead and just do a little partial squat. When the weights touch, stand back up. Keep your back on the pad. Perfect. To you, that may seem pretty simple, but to someone that's never worked out before or that's older, guess what? They're going to feel that in their legs and in their glutes, and we're going to start to increase their strength. And now as they start mastering the exercise, now go ahead, Brian, bring it down another notch. Just one more click. Stand back up. And again, you know, a week goes by, I want you to do another set of 10, and I'd check up on them to ultimately go ahead and go right down to just about parallel or up parallel. Right there, that's perfect. So parallel or slightly above parallel, that's the proper range of motion for the squat. The farther you drop your hips down into the squat, the more the glutes that you activate. So that's why I want to get down to parallel. So that's perfect. So I'm not going to progress Brian into any other exercise until he can show me that he can do those, you know, 10 times with a decent amount of weight or respectable weight and so forth. So now this is how we progress. So his back's on the pad, so his core really doesn't have to be engaged. Brian, take your hips off the pad just slightly. Now do a squat the same way. There you go. So now, guess what? His core is activated to stabilize his hips, just like if I was doing a free weight squat this way. So again, we probably would have to decrease the weight, work his way back up as his core gets stronger. So now, as he can, you know, now we want to activate it even more so. This is what I'm going to do, Brian, is your right leg, keep right there, but bring your left leg back to the end of the plate, stay on the ball of your foot. This is the leg you're going to do all the work on. Sure. Now go ahead and do the little split squat again. Guess what happens is now you're working more muscle fibers because we just took away his balance right here. So this leg is just for stabilization. That right leg, he's going to feel it more in his glutes and hamstrings because those muscle groups are the last muscles to be activated during the exercise. So again, once he shows you that he can do that with both legs, now do this, Brian, is actually take a step off and do a lunge, and then bring your foot back on. So kick it right back. Now lunge down. Now step up, and then you can put your foot back on the plate, just like that, and then nice big step back. There you go. Perfect. See, and that's an even more advanced exercise, but the benefit is still in the safety of the machine. Just if you're trying to teach, you know, doing a lunge with the dumbbells and so forth. So now you can go ahead and drop it down, and I'll show you the rest. Okay. And so that's kind of the progression. So, and see, that would be that would be, you know, that's great. So now, then once you start getting to athletics, so once they show you all of those, now we can start increasing the difficulty of the exercise more, or even the speed. So, you know, what I can do is, take some weight off here, is take those lunges that he was doing, just like this, and now I can kind of get more into like a realistic speed of a sport. See, now I'm getting a little bit more power. So I can just do squat jumps. I can add a little twist, you know, like the transverse, like a downhill skier. Do things like this. But again, you know, you wouldn't do that unless they knew the basics. Again, as you start to take away support and increase speed, you're adding intensity to the exercise. So some of you may not ever get to that progression, but some of you might. But you know, a successful athlete, they would have to master those exercises. So, any questions with that? Once we get through them, then you guys can get on and try everything. All right, so let's go to the last two. The same way as everything else. So now, you know, traditionally, again, you think back to the machines that you had in here. You sat down in the machine, you know, leg extension. You had support underneath your knee. You adjusted your shin pad, adjusted your back pad, and then you did a leg extension like this. You were able to really load up that quadricep. But again, on the athletic field in everyday life, when we flex or extend at the knee, what are we doing? We're balancing on the opposite leg, and then we're flexing at the hip. So this is what you want. This is the benefit of this exercise. So you walk in, just drop your toe into the boot, just like this. And I usually just kind of bring it to the ground, kick it down there. Stand at the edge of the plate, hold on, just like this. There's two ways you can do this. I can keep my knee down low, taking my hip flexor out of it, and just do a leg extension this way. So I'll be able to do a lot more weight in this position right here. But how you want it, so I'm starting off like this, holding up, knee down, so I can increase weight. The next progression is this, and this is one of the better ways to do it. Keeping your knee up high and then extending out this way. And the reason why is, with my knee up high, guess what happened? My hip flexor had to activate to support my knee and all this resistance. I can guarantee you, even with 3 plates on here, most of you probably couldn't do a set of 10 or 15. Because again, as we get older, when are we ever activating our hip flexors? We have to lunge, squat, step, sprint to do that. And what happens is we don't have hardly any muscle endurance in our hip flexors. So now as you start to be able to do a set of 10 or 15 without that cramping up, now you can let go. Guess what happens is now this is activated even more so. I can isolate the hip flexor even more so by keeping my legs straight, just like this, doing that. Or for athletics, you know, I can do bicycle drills. See, this is a great exercise to increase the flexibility and hip strength of an athlete for sprinting. That way. So, when you get on it, if you're used to using a traditional leg extension, your immediate reaction would be like, oh, this is different. I don't know if I like this. It's because now you're getting into something that's totally unsupported. But that's a good thing because, again, why develop muscle strength that you'll never use? You'd rather do this. You know, obviously, if I was bodybuilding for a competition, this wouldn't be the best exercise because a fixed leg extension, I can overload that muscle group. So does that make a little bit more sense? And then this is the opposite now. This machine is the hamstring. So, and again, your body always has an agonist and an antagonist muscle. And you always want to make sure you're training both sides of your body. So, you know, you have bicep, tricep, chest, back, quad, hamstring. So, with the hamstring now, show you. The easiest way to get in is just to drop your toe into it and then get your heel into it just like that. And then you just step on the plate and just kind of step off to the side. And then here's your basic isolated hamstring curl. So if you just want to isolate the hamstring, just like this. I'm holding onto the machine. Now I can just, increase the intensity by letting go doing this, because now I have to balance on this leg. If I want to activate the hamstring like a sprinter, see, your hamstring crosses two joints. It not only crosses your knee, but it attaches onto the top of your hips. So what I can do is I can do this. I can do glute kickers. See where I'm actually extending at the knee. I'm flexing at the knee, or extending at, flexing at the knee and extending at the hip. That's kind of working two joints. Where immediately then I can do abductors, like this. I can go into adduction. I can do, again, skating drills. I can do lateral movements this way. I can do like your basic isolate the glutes by keeping my legs straight.